Automated scanners frequently used to highlight specific faults and recommend network repairs. Three different scanners will be introduced to us in this lab in order to help us find any potential system vulnerabilities. Considering this, good morning to you all. My name is Chima Felix, and today we will use our Kali box to do a scan of the Qualtrics 2 virtual machine to check for vulnerabilities. But first, let's examine the Qualtrics 2 VM's enumeration in more detail. By performing numerous nmap scans on the system, we were able to perform an enumeration of the Qualtrics 2 virtual machine. These are the outcomes after emulating the Qualtrics 2 virtual machine. Our objective is crucial to know that we were able to find and identify the Qualtrics 2 virtual machine's IP address by conducting the nmap scan against the computer. Let's now examine more closely the various nmap scans we conducted utilizing the Kali box. The screenshot above helps to highlight the basic ping sweep of the machine. We were able to discover and determine the IP address of the Qualtrics 2 virtual machine by running the command nap 192.168.56.0/34 in the Kali Linux command line terminal. And as you can see in the image, we were able to also discover that the Qualtrics 2 virtual machine had some open ports, like the port 22 SSH, port 80 HTTP, and port 111, which is RPC bind, etc. In the screenshot above, the nmap command, which is the nmap-0192.168.56.106, is used to enumerate and footprint the Qualtrics 2 virtual machine. This command aids and facilitates the system's built-in nmap scan. This makes it easier to identify the operating system of the Qualtrics 2 device. Please note that this is merely a best guess as to the operating system of the Qualtrics 2 computer. And as you can see, it specifies that the Qualtrics 2 system is running Linux 2.6.x. Linux versions 2.6.9 through 2.6.30 are also included in the OS data. So the emulation and footprinting of the Qualtrics 2 virtual machine using the nmap command nmap-sv192.168.56.106 is further highlighted in the image above. This specific nmap scan is carried out to ascertain the version of the services running on the ports. This scan will allow us to find out which versions of these services run on which ports and assess whether the current version is vulnerable. The accompanying photos demonstrate the emulation and footprinting of the Qualtrics 2 virtual machine using the nmap command, which is nmap-p-a192.168.56.106. This intrusive and aggressive scan provides a comprehensive description of the services, operating system, and other elements of the Qualtrics 2 virtual machine. This is an additional picture of the same command that we just talked about. Also, this is another command that we utilize for the emulation and footprinting of the Qualtrics virtual machine, which is the nmap-sc192.168.56.106. Also, we utilize the command nmap-v-sss192.168.56.106 to emulate the Qualtrics 2 virtual machine to get the script scan of the system. Now, a straightforward open-source web server scanner called NIC2 scans a website and identifies any vulnerabilities it discovers that could be exploited to hack or exploit the site. Now, the installation of the NIC2 in the Kali Linux virtual machine is highlighted in the screenshots above. We took care to install NIC2 in the Kali Linux virtual machine before using it. In order to successfully install NIC2 in the Kali Linux virtual machine, we also included the command apt-get install NIC2 as seen in the image above. And the success is evident in the picture up above. After setting up NIC2, we can use it to check the Qualtrics 2 virtual machine for several vulnerabilities. The aforementioned screenshot serves to demonstrate how Nikto is used in Kali Linux to search for various vulnerabilities inside the Cube62 virtual machine. We made sure to enter the command nikto-h 192.168.56.106 in the Kali Linux command line interface to identify and find several vulnerabilities in the Cube62 virtual machine. And after running this command, as shown in the screenshot above, we were able to find few vulnerabilities. Some of the vulnerabilities include anti-click jacking extreme options header is not present, X content type options header is not set, cross-site tracing or cross-site scripting, etc. Let's now examine OWASP, another vulnerability scanning tool. A security auditing toolkit called OWASP, that is Z Attack Proxy, helps find and fix vulnerabilities in web applications. It is capable of carrying out a variety of security tasks, including passively monitoring online requests, employing crawlers to figure out a site's organizational structure, and retrieving all links and URLs on a page. The installation of OWASP in the Kali Linux VM is selected in the screenshot above. We made sure to install the OWASP tool on Kali Linux as shown in the above image before we could use it. We launched it on the machine after installing it. The screenshot up top serves to demonstrate how the OWASP is used. We took carefully to fill out the URL to attack field on this page with the target IP address, which is the Cube62 IP address, that is 192.168.56.106, to conduct an automated scan. After that, we made sure to hit the attack button to initiate the attack. By doing this, we were able to locate many weaknesses in the Cube62 virtual machine. With the help of this attack, we were able to learn new information of the Cube62 virtual machine system. From the automated scan we ran against the Cube62 virtual machine, we were able to obtain several results, as I previously said. After the attack, as seen in the screenshot above, we found new information on the Access Scan tab. We can see that it was on the index PHP page. Also, we can see other information within the Access Scan tab, like robots.txt was not found, and sitemap.xml was not found. Additionally, after executing this automated scan, we found new material, and you can see more of it in future presentations. As a previously mentioned, the automatic scan performed on the Cube62 virtual machine allowed us to learn a lot of information. Now that we have identified some information in the Spider tab, it is easy to view it in the image above. We can see in the Spider tab that certain information was detected when the Cube62 virtual machine was subjected to the automated scan. Among the information were the discoveries of robots.txt and sitemap.xml. In other words, these are the many websites that this automated scan turned up. Let's now quickly review a few more vulnerabilities that the automated scan against the Cube62 virtual machine turned up. As you can see, we can clearly see that there are different vulnerabilities that we're able to capture using the automated scan. We can see the SQL injection. We can see the absence of the CSRF header. We can also see the S content we previously mentioned, the header not set. Additionally, we were able to discover some vulnerabilities which include missing anti-click jacking header, again X content type options header missing, etc. Lastly, let's take a look at the history tab of the automated scan in the OWASP. Now, the picture above shows the history of the automated scan that was performed by OWASP. The Cube62 virtual machine, which is the IP address, was scanned, as is evident on the history tab on the OWASP, which is how we're able to find all the machine's vulnerabilities. Now, let's take a closer look at the differences between Nikto and OWASP. Nikto is an open source web server scanner that runs extensive tests on web servers for a variety of things, including over 600 and 700, 6,700 potentially harmful files and programs. Checks for out-of-date versions on over 1,250 sites and version-specific issues on over 270 servers. Additionally, it looks for server configuration elements like the existence of multiple index files and HTTP server settings and tries to locate any installed web servers and applications. Plugins and scans items can automatically update and are often updated. Now, let's take a brief look at what OWASP is. However, basically, OWASP maintains ZAP, an open source tool for web application scanning and pen testing. It is the most well-liked free web security tool in the world, according to the OWASP website. Web applications and the pen testers client are separated by ZAP. As a result, it can be used as a proxy to intercept data transmissions and decide how an application will react to potentially harmful requests. ZAP is made to be adaptable and available to a range of security professionals with various work positions and skill levels. Furthermore, anyone can view the source code and make contributions because it is open source. Additionally, a penetration testing tool called OWASP aids online application developers and security experts in identifying and locating vulnerabilities. Now, insecure distillation, expose sensitive data, compromise authentication, security configuration errors, SQL injection, cross-site scripting, and components with no vulnerabilities are just a few of the web application flaws that OWASP can spot. And as we saw, it can actually do that within a system. Now, in saying this, let's take a brief look at what CSRF does. Now, after performing a vulnerability assessment on the Kyrgyzstan virtual machine, as we mentioned before in this presentation, we were able to identify a vulnerability known as CSRF, that is cross-site request forgery. Now, cross-site request forgery, often referred to as XSRF or CSOF or session writing, is a type of attack that deceives a web browser into carrying out an undesirable activity in an application that the user is signed into. A successful CSRF attack has the potential to be disastrous for the user and the business, damage customer relationships, unlawful financial transfers, password changes, and data theft, including session cookie theft, can also all arise from it. CSRFs are frequently carried out via deceptive social engineering techniques, including an email or link that compels the victim to submit a false request to a server. It is impossible to tell a genuine request from a fake one because the unaware user is authenticated by that program at the time of the attack. Now, as a result of executing the Nessus scan against the Kyrgyzstan virtual machine, we were able to identify the XSS attack. However, it's important to remember that during our prior scan utilizing the NICTO and OWASP tool, we were also able to recognize it as cross-site tracing attack. In an injection attack known as cross-site scripting, a threat actor inserts data, like a malicious script, into material from reputable websites. The malicious code is subsequently supplied to a victim's browser along with dynamic content. One of the most prevalent types of cyber attacks is XSS. JavaScript code fragments are frequently used to send malicious scripts, which the victim's browser then runs. Exploits can contain dangerous executable code written in a variety of other languages, such as Java, Ajax, and HTML. Although XSS assaults can be dangerous, it is generally simple to stop the flaws that make them possible. Additionally, altering web page content, vandalizing them, and stealing sensitive information can destroy the entire website. Depending on the type of program or website, its features, and the victim status. A cross-site scripting attack might have different effects. Such attacks also impact your website if they have an impact on your users. Running the Nessus tool, which we will cover next, allowed us to identify this vulnerability. Nessus is a potent and adaptable vulnerability assessment tool that supports proactive risk management for enterprises security. It offers precise vulnerability identification because of its extensive coverage, sophisticated scanning algorithms, and compliance auditing capabilities. Let's now examine in more detail how we apply the Nexus tool to these projects. We made sure to launch the Nessus application software on Kali Linux as seen in the above screenshots before utilizing the Nessus tool. After launching the Nessus program, we switched to the Kali Linux browser, which is the Firefox, where we entered the address for the Nessus tool, which is localhost colon 8834, which is the port number, to launch Nessus Online. After all the plugins had been properly compiled in the system, we were then allowed to access the Nessus tool. Please remember, though, that we took care to sign into Nessus with our credentials. We also make sure to select the new scan option after logging into Nessus to run a fresh scan of our target computer, which is the PO32 virtual machine. As seen in the next slide, after selecting the new scan option, we're taken to a screen titled Scan Templates. There are several scans that we can perform utilizing the Nessus tool, as shown in the image above. However, we chose to use the web application test scan templates for this lab assignment. We made sure to submit all the information required to complete the scan after selecting the web application test scan template, as shown in the incoming slides. As shown in the image above, we made sure to enter all the necessary details needed to perform a successful scan of the Cube2 virtual machine. And more importantly, we made sure to identify the scan with the name Felix underscore Cube2 and insert the IP address of our target system, that is the Cube2 virtual machine, which is 192.168.56.106. We may now click the Save button to save the scan after that. To begin scanning the Cube2 virtual machine, we then click the Launch button as shown in the next slide. After the scan was completed, we made sure to click on the scan to view the different information, that is the vulnerabilities found in the Cube2 virtual machine, using the web application test scan template of the Nessus tool. As you can see in the image above, there are two critical, 27 high, 22 medium, 5 low, 37 information vulnerabilities in the Cube2 virtual machine. It is crucial to note that we could only view the VPR on the vulnerability page because the VPR tab was missing from this version of the Nessus tool. As you can see, these are the different vulnerabilities we're able to find in the Cube2 virtual machine using the Nessus tool. There's an additional image of the same result after running the scan, the Nessus scan against the Cube2 virtual machine. These are the notes of the Nessus scan taken from the Cube2 virtual machine. These are the remediations of the Nessus scan. And these are some of the vulnerabilities we're able to find in particular. Most of them have the critical, they have also we have the low, and we have the medium. You can see the web application, different vulnerabilities we're able to find utilizing the Nessus tool. Clickjacking, as we saw previously, using the Nick tool and the OWASP tool. You can see this is where we're able to find the XSS, the different XSS vulnerabilities within the Cube2 virtual machine. Let's now examine more closely at some of the Cube2 VMs vulnerabilities that we were able to locate. Now, the various vulnerabilities that we're able to locate after scanning the Cube2 system include SQL injection, absence of anti-CSRF tokens, content security policy header not set, missing anti-clickjacking header, server leaks information, X content type options header missing, outdated software, web server returns a valid response with junk HTTP methods, false positives, PHP unsupported version detection, cross-site tracing, and also cross-site scripting. Additionally, we have the server leaks version information and PHP leaks potentially sensitive information. A list of potential software system faults is generated through analysis of the system specifications and documentation using the flaw hypothesis methodology, a technique for systems analysis and penetration prediction. The list of potential weaknesses is then ranked in order of estimated likelihood that they exist as well as ease of exploitation to the point of control or breach. The system's actual testing is guided by the list that has been given authority. In other words, it is a list of potential faults in a software system generated using the flaw hypothesis methodology, a system analysis, and a penetration prediction tool after a review of the system specifications. Finding this defect is the main focus of the flaw hypothesis methodology, basically. Furthermore, a list of potential faults in a system is generated using the flaw hypothesis methodology. Now, for this Qualtrics tool, we made sure to hypothesize some different flaws we found in this. Based on our research, it is possible to hypothesize that a machine's flaw allows and authorizes unprivileged and unauthorized accounts on the system's external access. According to the hypothesis underlying my research, the system contains several vulnerabilities, some of which are generated from open ports such as port 22, which is the SSH protocol, port 80, which is the HTTP protocol, and port 3306, which is the MySQL protocol, showing that the system is vulnerable and has defects as they are more straightforward to exploit and permit unauthorized access. Additionally, open ports can be used in attacks like SQL injections and cross-site scripting, along with a public IP address that can be spoofed. We may also argue that the hypothesis is flawed due to the remote OS, which was identified via the TCP/IP stack. At least one TCP plot can also be a problem for the theory. In light of data on latency, MAC addresses, and description of the Qualtrics IP addresses, the theory can potentially be viewed as faulty. A procedure known as vulnerability assessment, sometimes known as vulnerability analysis, finds, measures, and examines security flaws in IT infrastructure, basically. Now, any kind of organization or even single person at higher risk of a cyber assault can benefit from some kind of vulnerability assessment. Although vulnerability analysis will be most helpful to major companies and other kinds of organizations that are frequently targeted by attacks. For this lab project, we took care to complete a vulnerability analysis utilizing several tools of the Qualtrics tool system. As you can see from our previous NAP scans and the screenshots of the NAP scan above, additionally, after doing a vulnerability analysis, we discovered several open ports on the Qualtrics tool device. These ports function as weaknesses in the Qualtrics tool device. The ports include, among others, HTTP, that's the port 80, MySQL port 3306, and OpenSSH port 22. Following the completion of the vulnerability research, some flaws were discovered in these numerous ports. including those that allowed for unauthorized access, incorrect configuration, privilege escalation, SQL injection, cross-site scripting, etc. Here are some of the screenshots from the system vulnerability study we performed. Now, this is the vulnerability analysis of the system using the nmap. We're able to discover this using the nmap-sv 192.168.56.106 command. Also, we're able to discover some different vulnerabilities using the nmap-v-sss 192.168.56.106 command. Basically, we were able to successfully access systems vulnerabilities by using the several nmap commands depicted in the aforementioned photographs. After having said that, let's create and use a vulnerability map for the system. Now, the act of locating and evaluating the significant security holes in a target environment is known as vulnerability mapping. Identifying security holes that could lead to a system compromise is done through the process of vulnerability mapping. Occasionally, researchers will substitute vulnerability assessment for vulnerability mapping, but they share the same characteristics. As you can see, these are some of the different vulnerabilities we're able to map out from the system. Firstly, we have the misconfiguration. System errors happen as a result of network assets having insecure settings or inconsistent security measures. Additionally, we have the unpatched OS. Unpatched vulnerabilities are a preferred entry point for malicious actors to infiltrate networks. Unpatched vulnerabilities are weaknesses or security problems in hardware, software, or other systems that have not yet been fixed by an update or patch. We also have the remote code execution. No matter where the target computing device is located, remote code execution occurs when an attacker accesses the device and makes changes remotely. Then next we have the cross-site tracing attack. Cross-site tracing is used in cross-site scripting is used in cross-site tracing attacks. It employs the HTTP trace or track protocols. The client can view the responses being received at the other end of the request chain using trace. Additionally, we have the poor encryption vulnerability. Now, networks without or with subpar encryption make it possible for hackers to intercept system-to-system communication, creating a breach. Next, we have the weak credentials. Attackers frequently use employee credentials to brute force their way into a network as a method of entry. Employees should be informed about security best practices so that their login credentials cannot be easily used to access a network. Now that we know this, let's briefly look at some more relationships between the vulnerabilities and the system. We have the open port, that is the open SSH port 22. You can see there it has the vulnerabilities of the remote code execution and unauthorized access. We also have the HTTPS, which is the port 44C, and it has the vulnerabilities of the SQL injection and DDoS attacks. These are just a few that we just have to mention for the vulnerability map. We have also the MySQL protocol, which is port 3306, which is SQL injection. It is SQL injection and also unauthorized access. Then we also have the HTTP attack, which includes the DDoS attacks. We have also the cross-site scripting attack. We have also the cross-site request forgeries attack, which can be also found within the HTTP port, which is port 80. Now, the process of identifying, evaluating, addressing, and disclosing security weaknesses in an organization hardware and software is known as vulnerability analysis. It may be a time-consuming and laborious operation to manually search for vulnerabilities and fix them. Basically, this is for different companies and organizations. Now, with that said, let's take a deeper look at how the various tools for identifying vulnerabilities are used and applied. Firstly, we have the nmap tool. The nmap security scanner, which was created initially for Linux, offers binary packages for Windows, macOS, and Linux. To find out what hosts, services, and operating systems are offered by its device, nmap uses IP packets as a port scanner. Basically, NF is a quick, useful, and lightweight tool that penetration testers and IT teams value for listing open ports on a system. Among many security experts, Nmap is one of the widely used free and open source network scanning tools. Nmap basically uses the probing approach to find hosts on a network and to identify OS systems. Also, for Nmap, we have the Nikto. After Nmap, we have the Nikto tool. Nikto is a free CLI-based utility that checks servers and websites for known flaws and incorrect setups. It supports complete HTTP proxy and SSL. It is a program that searches web-based programs and web servers for known malicious files that might be harmful. It can also identify other problems like port scanning, user emulation, and outdated configuration, as we just saw in our previous slides. Nikto is a highly regarded open source web vulnerability scanner used to identify potential problems and weaknesses. It is also used to check whether the system or server versions are out of date and to look for any specific issues that might impair the server's functionality. On the web servers and apps of the Crypto virtual machine, we use Nikto to run several tests and scan various items such as few dangerous files and programs. Additionally, it was used to scan many protocols including HTTP, HTTPS, HTTPD, and others. We use Nikto to look for both default and unsafe files. This utility enables a port scanning of several servers on a single host. Also, we have the OWASP tool, and this is an open source web application security scanner that can assist us in identifying and taking advantage of typical web vulnerabilities, including SQL injection, cross-site scripting, photo authentication, and more. Additionally, it can operate as a proxy, enabling us to monitor and alter the communication between our browser and the web, just as we saw previously. OWASP can be used manually or automatically via plugins, APIs, or scripts. It supports several modes, including fuzzy, spidering, and passive and active scanning. Now, let's take a look at an additional technique, which is called the vulnerability scanning. But before we do that, let's take a look at Nessus. Now, Tenable Network Security developed the trademark and proprietary vulnerability scanner known as Nessus. Nessus can search for vulnerabilities that allow for remote hacking of sensitive data and shield networks from hacker efforts. In addition to cloud infrastructure, virtual and physical networks, the tool provides a wide variety of operating system databases, applications, and other devices. That's why we're able to utilize it fully. Now, it is also crucial to note that these tools and methods were properly implemented in the Kali Linux VM by running all the prevalent protocols and processes, setting up the appropriate parameters, and inputting the required commands to help scan and identify all the vulnerabilities in the Crypto virtual machine. And we make sure to incorporate the techniques of port and vulnerability scanning within these tools in these projects. Moreover, we took sure to use the network emulation technique to identify the typical threats and vulnerabilities. To eliminate the network, several technologies are available. Each tool carries out the footprinting or emulation by its notion. While these programs largely extract the same data, they do it in various ways, which we just discussed. For example, or should I say for this project, Nikto, OWASP, and Nessus were required. While OWASP makes use of a graphical user interface, Nikto is a command line program. Nessus also it's also one of the most well-liked open source vulnerability scanners. As I mentioned, scanning for more than 6,500 CVs with the most recent information offers wide coverage. By offering a scripting language to create customized system tests, it also offers flexibility. It gives scans it gives scans from three separate tools that work on various ends on the spectrum. In other words, we use Nikto, WhatsApp, and Nessus for this task. The outcomes were contrasted. As already indicated, the outcomes were quite similar also. To uncover vulnerabilities at every level of the system, Nessus was also used as an extremely intrusive scan. Now, penetration testing is an illustration of a method we use in this project to identify vulnerability. Penetration testing is the act of assessing an application security and exploiting any security flaws or hazards discovered within a resource such as a website, server, database, network, or mobile application to determine how seriously they threaten the asset's security. Now, some of the techniques we utilized were the vulnerability scanning we utilized to trace a vulnerability to its root source were the vulnerability scanning and testing. Now, the process of finding, evaluating, and reporting security defects and vulnerabilities is known as vulnerability scanning. Vulnerability scanning, along with vulnerability assessment, is a crucial stage in the vulnerability management lifecycle. Through the use of specialist software, vulnerability scanning is often carried out on assets connected to and utilizing a network. The software is dependent on a database of identified anomalies, which is frequently based on the CVE database of threats that have been made public. Now, we also utilize a technique called port scanning. Port scanning is a technique for figuring out which ports in a network are open and accessible. Additionally, packets are sent to specific ports on the host to analyze the responses and look for potential underlying vulnerabilities. Identifying the configuration of IP addresses, hosts, and ports is the goal of port scanning and network scanning to reliably detect open or insecure server connections and determine security levels. Also, we utilize the technique called network scanning, as we just previously mentioned. To check for weak or dubious passwords, network scanning works in conjunction with port scanners. Additionally, it conducts limited pen testing without interfering with network operations and uses vulnerabilities found to isolate attack paths and other abnormalities without compromising system or network performance. We also made use of the technique called network mapping. The act of locating logical and physical interconnection within your network is known as network mapping. Networks can be mapped using both physical and virtual components, as we just saw. And they typically use the switches, routers, firewalls, internet hubs, and access points. A better understanding of the device is provided by network mapping. As we previously mentioned, we made sure to use tools like Nmap, Nessus, Nikto, and OWASP to help identify the root causes also of all of the different vulnerabilities in the Cube2 virtual machine. We were able to identify the main causes of vulnerabilities like cross-site scripting and SQL injection, among others. In other words, these technologies can also be taught as of methods for identifying vulnerabilities underlying causes. They assisted in carrying out an accurate root cause investigation of the Cube2 virtual machine. We were able to see many vulnerabilities and their root causes, which were mentioned in the preceding slides as a result of these. Now, the approach that cyber attackers take to compromise an IT system is referred to as an attack vector, basically. Now, the difference in light of this, let's take a deeper look at the many attack pathways that we might speculate on using based on our understanding of the vulnerabilities we discovered. The first is the weak passwords and credentials. Cyber criminals concentrate their efforts on brute force assaults on breaking into users' IDs and passwords that are weak or, or obvious. However, hackers can also collect passwords by utilizing software that keeps track of when users enter their access credentials on public Wi-Fi or networks. For instance, a hacker could use an infected website or email to install keylogin software on a user's computer. The user's input of their ID and password is one of the keyboard activities that the keylogin program records. We also hypothesize the attack vector of security misconfiguration. Businesses may configure their hardware and software security incorrectly, making them vulnerable to hackers. Equipment vendors' security settings are lax, and if IT doesn't change them before deploying them on networks, security breaches may happen. In yet more instances, businesses buy equipment yet fail to completely set security. Furthermore, a security misconfiguration is any mistake or flaw in the configuration of code that gives attackers access to confidential information and results in a data breach or total system compromise. We also saw the attack vector of social engineering attacks, the SQL injection, and others also. Now, because the many vulnerabilities identified within the Cryptix2 virtual machine all point to these attack codes, we can make assumptions utilizing these various attack vectors. These attack methods essentially take advantage of every hole identified in the Cryptix2 virtual machine. In other words, these attack vectors are usable in the system due to the various machine vulnerabilities we all found. For instance, the cross-site scripting attack vector can be assumed to be vulnerable due to the system's open ports and unpatched ports and protocols. The system vulnerability can be used by this attack to its advantage and be used to attack the system. We can also hypothesize using these different attack vectors because of the different flaws found and detected within the Cryptix2 virtual machine. Now, the technique of disclosing security holes in computer hardware or software is known as vulnerability disclosure. It is possible for security researchers, IT security teams, internal developers, outside developers, and others who work with weak systems to directly reveal vulnerabilities to the people who created the weak systems. Basically, transparency can encourage a culture of cooperation and feedback among many stakeholders, which can enhance the accuracy and efficiency of vulnerability detection and treatment. A possible breach or attack can also be avoided or its effects reduced by promptly exposing a vulnerability. Security in vulnerability disclosure entails preserving the secrecy and reliability of pertinent data and systems. As different parties may have varying needs and expectations for the level of detail and disclosure, finding the right balance can be challenging. It also necessitates coordination with numerous stakeholders, including vendors, researchers, regulators, and users. Due to the various incentives, priorities, and time scales for disclosing and patching a vulnerability, the process can be complicated and time consuming. When revealing or hiding a vulnerability, legal and ethical problems must also be taken into consideration. For instance, failing to disclose a vulnerability could result in ethical conundrums, like endangering users or flouting disclosure standards, while failing to disclose a vulnerability could result in legal consequences, like breach of contract or copyright infringement. A complicated issue, balancing security and transparency in its vulnerability disclosure depends on several variables, including the type of system, the type of components, and legal and regulatory environments. To attain a reasonable balance, there are various frameworks and rules you can follow. Best practices for vulnerability disclosure are outlined in the ISO 29147 standard, which also addresses sensitive data handling and communication strategies. Now, the coordinated vulnerability disclosure paradigm is a cooperative strategy that entails collaboration among the process's participants. It maximizes the advantages of security advancement while reducing the risk of harm to users and systems. Now, we chose the SQL injection issue to talk about based on our vulnerability scans. We can speculate that web forms, basically a constructed API, are to blame for the SQL injection vulnerability. This gives hackers unrestricted access to unrestricted access so they can use the poorly developed API to harm the system or steal sensitive data. We might therefore summarize that poor coding led to the development of the SQL injection vulnerability. Sensitive and private information may be compromised as a result of this. Additionally, SQL injection vulnerabilities occur when websites do not sufficiently screen, filter, or control the request from the website, allowing attackers to try to inject SQL code fragments into database queries to extract information. In other words, an application vulnerability known as a SQL injection occurs when malicious SQL codes are used to alter databases. As a result, attackers can alter how applications query the database. A successful SQL injection gives the attacker database administrators powers, allowing them to access sensitive information, including passwords, usernames, financial information, and addresses without authorization. Some of the most well known data breaches in history, like the Pirate Bay, were caused by SQL injection. Furthermore, the injection of SQL occurs when carefully written content is entered into input fields on web forms and web pages. SQL injection attacks take place when a web application fails to check values obtained from web forms, cookies, input parameters, etc., before delivering them to SQL queries that will be run on a database server. This will give a hacker the ability to change the inputs so that the data is read as code rather than as actual data. The text is made to play with SQL syntax and insert code that can immediately run on the internal SQL database server. The database may be forced to produce sensitive information, delete important data, or change important information as a result of these malicious inputs. Moreover, the process of sanitizing the kind and content of data provided by a user and application begins with input validation. Verifying user inputs sent in web forms, query parameters, uploads, and other areas is typically what input validation for web applications entails. Many web security flaws, such as cross-site scripting and SQL injection, are caused by missing or insufficient input validation. When an application does not correctly validate or sanitize input data before processing it, a security vulnerability results. An attacker may be able to leverage this vulnerability to inject malicious inputs into the program, which they may then use to compromise the system or steal confidential data. A serious security flaw that affects a variety of applications, including web applications, desktop applications, and mobile apps, is improper input validation. Please, if you have a question, you can ask. Thank you.